computational design team. So Humphrey, I was hoping if you can just help us with the chairs, and we'll have a bit of Q&A. And speaking of saving time, they've saved us at least 20 minutes. So I would like to open the floor and invite our facilitator in for final questions. We'll try, Thomas and has already had to fly out, as well as City of Cape Town. But we've invited some of our panelists to join us on the conversation. Anything you'd like to ask this team, you're welcome to. We're also going to accept your questions on WhatsApp and field it to our community that way. And then any reflections of the 2 days of the BIM conference, we'd be very open to discuss. There's nothing we're shy about, and there are no filters. So please enjoy the facilitated panel.
Good afternoon. Again. This time, it is not my time, it is your time. So all of the questions we had paused, we had pinned, it's the time to let them fly. But firstly, are there any questions directed to the current presenters? If there are, may we have an indication by a raise of hands? There's one right over there, Rod. Yeah, just there.
So what is your advice for people who are afraid to get into AI because they believe that AI is going to take over the world?
Yeah, I'd say I think there is sometimes a bit of an inherent fear, but as I think it was Richard that mentioned or made the comment that in a large manner we are still pioneers in what we do. So we do have the opportunity to guide the course. And particularly for you, I think that's part of the younger generation. I still remember the day when I was first year in February of 2013. It was in the lecture hall next door. The dean at the time, Professor Sunil Maharaj, he had a similar opinion on it. And as his first years, he said, the things you train for today will not necessarily be relevant tomorrow, and you will do a job that does not exist today. And as sitting here as computational designers, this position did not exist 11 years ago. And that cycle time between these technological revolutions are shortening and quickening. So there will eventually be something even following on from artificial intelligence. And the barrier of entry from our point of view is becoming increasingly lower. Everyone can go onto ChatGPT now and ask it a question. And that was a pipe dream about 5 years ago. And yes, there are fears of it overtaking the world. The same fear happened with the arrival of computers. If you look at the definition of the computer in the 1950s, it was a majority female population that were literally doing calculations by hand, but they adapted and evolved, and the culture behind that also evolved during that process. So I think I have a less of a fear of AI, but more an admiration for the pace at which things are developing, but there's also opportunities that comes with that, what we're seeing in our industry, but ultimately a client still wants to talk to a person. If you go to a doctor, yes, they might use ChatGPT, hopefully not, but you will still want to talk to that doctor if he gives you a potentially life-altering prognosis. So that human element, I think, will always remain.
Hi guys.
I think to add to the answer, is what we highlighted in our slides was something called the Gartner hype cycle. And I think you need to remember where we are now at the moment with AI. And I think we're at the top of the hype. Yeah. So you'll probably find it'll come down a little bit before you start seeing AI make an impactful, long-lasting difference in industry, rather than just the hype that you're seeing in many applications at the moment.
Can you see me? Can you hear me? Okay, cool. I think first and foremost, excellent work, guys. It's fantastic to see that you're exploring this, and I appreciate that you're coupling the human skill set, as you know, I'm passionate about that, with the technology. So that's always a massive win. I think just speaking from I guess a personal journey within the business, it's always been quite interesting to see the build versus buy answer or argument rather. So when you are standing up solutions like this, how are you guys sort of going about maintaining the scalability? Let's say there's an alien spaceship that abducts all three of you today. Like, what happens to Sitari's bridge team? So I think, you know, it's always like, it's cool that people want to move into that realm of development, but often finding you guys, who I refer to as the unicorns of the industry, that have the best of both worlds at the moment with the coding and the qualification within the industry, it's very difficult to find those as hires, even at a reasonable salary. So just curious to know like how you guys are sort of dealing with that in the future.
Thank you. I think to answer your question, you will always find someone in your company that is willing to put in the footwork. So what we find is there might be the three of us on this stage, but there is a massive, for lack of a better word, culture in our company to keep evolving. And what you find is you will find, say, your unicorns here and there, but through better information management and through better systems management, you will find that all the work that we do is available to actually anyone in the company that asks for it. And one of our managers' taglines is, if you get run over by a bus today, your work needs to carry on tomorrow. So you need to make very sure that it's available to your team. And coming on from that, as an information scientist myself, I find being able to structure not just your data, but your workflows in such a way that someone that is not you can understand them is one of the most important things you can do at work. So yeah.
Hi, panel. This side here. Hi, sorry. I just wanted to quickly ask maybe a bit of context before I ask my question. I'm a QS. I've just started working. I'm actually at Zutari as well. I wanted to find out a little bit more about how computational design can help consultants outside the design space. So other than architects or engineers, obviously as a QS we do a lot of the cost engineering, so to speak, cost management, planning, reporting, etc. So how can computational design and almost that data manipulation aspect of it help the QS? I think some of us feel a little bit lost of how we can fit into this process, or where to start, or who to speak to, and how to make our lives a little bit more efficient or productive, as Andre mentioned.
So from my side, Richard, you over. From my side, I saw that when I started as well, I also was told help the engineers, but what ended up happening was that all those little workflows and things aren't unique just to engineers. Whether it's you transferring data between one software to Excel, or trying to manipulate any sort of workflow that you have in your day can see a benefit from computational design. So one project that I worked on it was to help engineers, but technically it had nothing to do with engineering. It was taking screenshots and moving those screenshots into a folder where they could be easily accessed and documented and stored with a file name. And anyone can do that. And like what we were talking about AI, anyone can learn to ask a question on a ChatGPT kind of software or even just Google how to rename a file with a programming language, and you'll get 100 different results. And then next time you need to rename a whole bunch of files, that's computational design. That's efficiency right there, when you don't have to go through 100 files and rename and increase a number or something along those lines. So, and those small things all add up into a workflow. And like Andre was saying at the beginning, we can't make a one-click tool. There's always going to be too much variability. And the most important thing that we can do is look at the system or the process or the workflow, whatever word you want to use, as a whole, and find the most time-wasting thing and attack that first and then move to the next one. Does that answer your question?
I think I can add maybe to the conversation leading to that. I'm construction manager, so by definition of the degree, it's a dual degree. You can be QS or CM, you can choose your specialization. But I wanted to share part of what we've been playing around with in the space. I've got an honors year program, honors year students who are using some of, it may not be computational design, but they're taking rivet models, which at object level, they overlay the cost and the scheduling on it. So that should an architect remove an object or a component of the design from the unit, it automatically corrects the cost and the scheduling. At a computational level, this is now 2017, where I was part of a computing and construction course up in Italy. We did all of those things. As a construction manager, my interest was, how do I then add a code on this so that should whatever happen to the design, should whatever dot be removed, it also talks to the per square meter cost, to the per square meter productivity, because that's the language that we use. So I can attest and say that it is possible. It is just for us to add onto that data component to say, for whatever square meter you design, this is our square meter cost, this is our square meter productivity, so that wherever the component sits, it can have that rich data. And just to add on, the gentleman up there was asking, Amanda, I'm interested in designing a software. I'm like, we need to be able to recognize where we are adding value as practitioners. If we already have all of this computational excellence, someone who comes in from an information management specialist, they don't have the QS richness, they don't have the GIS richness. We still have value to add across our different disciplines. There's no one's job that's going to be taken away, because for the data to give you quality, there needs to be quality from these core disciplines. And it's how we then overlay onto all of this excellence. And we give those who are able to program the formula of what they will put into the algorithm. So at times I get wary when we all want to learn Python. I'm like, no. There are guys who specialize in Python. Just explain to them what you would like as an output. You've got the excellence as a practitioner and the core competence of your practice. You don't need to do all of the courses. That's why we have a faculty full of, or universities full of different faculties. You do computer science for a reason, you do humanities for a reason, and it's how we build bigger teams and engage within the tools that we use. We've had a question this side, Rad.
Hi, is it audible? Okay, cool. So, Kaledi, I think this one goes to you, and going back to yesterday's discussion or maybe presentations, is that we learned about all the stages of the river beam process or procedures that are undertaken, right? But now, through research, or what I've came to be exposed to while I learn about BIM, is that currently we have 7 stages that are being implemented, with stage 8 and 9 and 10 still in development. And those stages are basically just safety, lean construction, and industrialization. But yesterday we went through all the way to stage 8 and 9 and included cultural heritage and demolition and reuse. So I think just for clarity, I want to understand how we got there and how far are we even to start implementing stage 8 and 9 formally. Thank you.
Sure. So we use this idea of BIM dimension, 3D, 4D, 5D, 6D, whatever, to help us understand the purpose of the project. It's not necessarily maturity. There's a difference there. It's the purpose. Like we do 3D BIM when you only care about geometry. We do 4D BIM when you add time to geometry. And it's purpose-driven. So 10D BIM is fully automated construction sector purpose. Does that make sense? So that's one side of the conversation. But the stages of delivering a project is a different conversation, right? It's time-based, start to finish. Stage 1 finishes, stage 2 completes, stage 3 completes. And when we say we are hoping to be in a stage 8 and 9 world, what we mean is that we are able to not just let projects die, but able to regenerate projects back to stage 0. And right now, the industry as a whole is commonly letting projects die and sending them to landfill. And what we're hoping to unlock with 8 and 9 is a full cycle of regenerative practice where we bring projects back to life. So it's helpful to see that as 2 types of conversations. The one is, what kind of BIM are we doing? Is it a BIM that includes time? Is it a BIM that includes safety? Is there what purpose is the project? And then the other side is the stages of maturity and development, which is a different kind of conversation. Does that help? All right, so when you're looking at BIM, we use this language just to help us as a team build consensus. But that doesn't mean this is fixed in stone or it's concrete, and in 2 or 3 years we're going to discover that Mars needs stage 14 BIM because Mars is a different planet and the purpose will be different, and the kind of ways we need to deliver buildings on Mars will be fundamentally different to the way we deliver buildings on planet Earth, and so it goes. So it's a helpful way to have a conversation, and it's a helpful way to get a lot of brains focused on the same purpose. But it doesn't mean it's the law, it's just helpful. And it's helpful to do it by purpose and by maturity.
I've got a question, guys. So I'm setting you up for an answer that I wanted to hear about is quality of information, and just how important, or maybe not important, it is to have a good baseline of information to work with. You know, how much can you do with bad info, or how much does that ruin the potential of computational design if the information is not that great?
That's an excellent question, Richard. And I think I know what you're setting us up for. Because bad quality information in is bad quality information out. And coming back to the bridge project, there was a period of discussion with the client that we had. So I make no provision to say that we did spend a lot of time in the beginning of that project before we delivered anything, just finding out what they want and what they are giving us to give them what they want. Because a lot of the time you find on built projects, whether it's infrastructure or buildings, people don't even know what they want. So if you don't know what you want, how can you give me the information I need to give you what you don't know you want? So.
I want to add to that conversation. It's not because of ignorance that people don't know what they want. It's because we as a team, and that's why stage 0 BIM is so different from traditional design and construction. In traditional design and construction, client says, I want, whether or not they know what they want. But in this way of working, we find out what it is that we want. And it takes discovery to do that. It's not going to be the instruction comes on Monday through an email that I want building. It's going to be a process of learning together, formulating an us project, not a you project and a me project. And that takes a journey, it takes listening, and that's why the people side of this conversation is so important. The listening soft skills, the warm skills, the leadership skills are more important. Otherwise, we let the cold skills run in the wrong direction, and it's a car hitting a concrete wall, and it makes their life very difficult and useless if we don't have the warm conversation for a long time to make an us project. I think that's very helpful. Otherwise, the data is just garbage in, garbage out. Everybody wastes time.
So I agree with everything that they said, but let's just assume for a second that you do have bad data and there's nothing that you can do about it. That doesn't mean that we have to stop. That doesn't mean that you can't do anything with it. It just means that you need to think out of the box about how you use that, whatever data you have available, and it's something that I recently learned in the project that I'm currently on, is that I don't get the data I want, but you need to work to find a way around it so that you can still get to that process, because like we said in the slides, the projects are going to get more complex, they're going to get more difficult, and also the teams are going to get larger. And you can do everything that you can to help your team and to have the conversation and take these concepts out to everyone else, but you need to make sure that whatever you get, you do the most that you can with it. And there might be a ceiling, and that's always the case, but whatever you get, don't stop just because it's not exactly what you want.
Rich, I think it's quite a rich question. Because as I'm thinking about it and I'm hearing the responses, it's going to take a whole lot to unpack it. I see towards the lines of, besides these two parties who are scoping what needs to be done, what if they don't know what is good between themselves? To what level are we measuring quality in itself? And if we've got another entity, how can we standardize what we mean by saying this is a brief? How do we standardize what is a quality brief in itself? Because there's something in the brief which needs to be passed. So how do you know when to even reject the brief to say, I can't continue further because your brief is of poor quality? Because sometimes you may think you get it and you're excited, you fly with it, only to realize actually this brief wasn't as fully scoped. Very, very interesting. As we talk systemization, standardization, we need those measures of quality data, quality briefs, and so on. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm making an assumption here, which is to say, one of the reasons why we have some barrier to entry or to even try BIM is the cost of onboarding on those tools, I mean softwares to use them. And I'm looking at the pricing of them, which are dollar denominated. So, because I've been doing BIM since 2011, but in offshore construction, then I sort of say, let me go be part of the creators in Africa. So my question is directed towards Andre. What are the skill sets? Because you mentioned, I saw in one of your slides you mentioned Python, but how do you niche it for, say, construction? Such that, because at the moment I'm trying to explore that area and it seems very broad. Do you have maybe forums or materials that one can niche on to say, how do you develop the skill set to actually build tools in those sectors for BIM for construction?
So just repeat the last part of your question, just a bit louder.
So I said, how do you then build this skill set to build BIM tools for Africa? That is Africa creating those tools, not adopting external tools from other parts of the world.
So more like for localized applications and problems, is that
yes.
That's sort of the context I think you're referring to. I think it goes towards a more broader or generalized context, thinking now to what Louis presented as well with the different types of the drone application, for example, the road, or if you in a very rural type of space, to acquire the data. We had a very interesting discussion with one of our colleagues, but it's, even though it's Australia, Africa, you also have that contrast between the urban and the rural area, and they were proposing to build a mine at a particular location. It was quite remote, and one of the biggest challenges that they had with the community engagement is explaining to them how tall and how big this piece of infrastructure would be, and they didn't understand what a meter was, but luckily they had a drone with them, so they flew the drone up to the distance with the height, how tall that piece of infrastructure would be, and they showed them this is how tall it actually would be, and then they understood the problem. So quite an unconventional use case for engaging with the community in that way. But also I think especially the skill sets and the application of the technology component. If you look at things like the self-driving cars, if you go for any YouTube video on the application or the testing of it. It's typically somewhere in North America or Europe. And to think outside of the box is, when I engaged with another student that's doing research on this, is if we already have these cameras on these vehicles, and we are obviously importing those vehicles into Africa, imagine if we could utilize all of that data to do our road condition assessment. So yes, self-driving technology is good for obstacle avoidance and self-driving Ubers, that's one application. But if you can crisscross the South African road network, of which 80% is unpaved, if you could get a real-time condition assessment of the entire road infrastructure at zero cost, what would that application or implication be? And I think there's a big utility of that for young engineers also to get involved with that, and at a local municipality authority level on leveraging that information. It forms part of our information management strategies, infrastructure development, and it's a combination of the skill sets. Yes, AR, that's cool, but coupling that to our unique circumstances and challenges, I think there's rich opportunity for that.
I want to add something to that conversation, and sorry, Amanda, she's from the University of Cape Town. I made a mistake on your slide. Well, there you go. So building on that is solving small problems. If you want to build skill sets, you're not going to get it in a course. It's going to be practically solving the problem at hand. I have a family member who is also entering this kind of conversation, and he's in the technical space and the design space as well. And it's not about, I can't tell him, go and learn this set of things. It's by solving the small problems. It's like making that file structure automatic. It's about taking 2 hours out of your difficult workday. The skill sets lie in that practical application. It's that tiny little things that you do to solve a problem or something silly like that. That's how you build the skill sets. And the other side of it is some of the problems we think we solve with technology are not necessarily, they don't necessarily need advanced technology to solve. It just needs creativity. A lot of the stuff is all around us. There's a lot of open, easy stuff to explore, but it needs a creative mind, not a technical mind, to think about that solution. So I think there's 2 kinds of ways to build skills. Practice your creativity by solving very small problems often. And if you do that, you're going to have a very, very broad skill set quicker than going on courses.
And with the amount of TikTok videos going around, we don't even need to wait for the self-driving cars. Just put all of these minions outside, they send us all of the videos, and we do a full analysis of everything we have. But no, on a serious note, we do have ample data that's out there. We just need to find structured ways of analyzing and integrating it into our workflows and what it is that we want to do with the data. Have we got a question down here?
Hello? Okay. So, I have, let's say, 2 questions, because there are going to be more. But this is to probably everyone who presented for these past couple of, these 2 days, I guess. So now, my point of view is from a company background, a small company background. So, first question is, how do you change, if you're a new company or a small, if you're starting a company, how do you make sure that you implement BIM into your company without the necessary capital? What I'm asking is, how do you develop a structure, a BIM structure, so that everyone who comes in now has a more like a method to say, okay, so in this company we do it this way because it's better, before you start with the equipment and the software that we have learned. So how do we implement that in a new or growing company? That is the first question.
Can I answer your first question first? Okay. I think the thing is you have to approach it from a mindset point of view. So it's not about implementing BIM as a BIM tool or a BIM software. It's about implementing a mindset of saying, I am going to do my best work to keep this information as well structured and as high quality as possible. I think we've all seen the memes and things of, I have a file, I'm going to name it final. And I'm going to make a revision, so I'm going to name it final 2. And then there's going to be another one, so it's going to be final 2 and today's date. And I've just followed 3 different systems for naming that file. So whether you're a new company, a small company, a big company, it's about that mindset of, I am always going to decide to do it this way, and that's going to treat me well moving into the future. And I think that's where something like ISO 19650 can help you with a foot in the door with how to do those types of things. Silly example, but just to bring home that it's a mindset.
And just to add, I think for smaller companies it's even easier because there is no change, it's a startup. So if you're starting from a clean slate, you can start right. And information management. Second question, and then we take the question there by Rod.
I just want to add to that. BIM's motto is people, process, tech. Tech is last. You can do BIM analog. If you start with people and then how to process, you can forget about tech in a small company. If you do those 2 things well, you're BIMing. And I think that's really, really important because we've put so much emphasis on the technology because it's cool. But it is people, process, then tech. Small companies are much more powerful at applying this because they have so much more control on people, just like Astrid said.
Okay, so now you guys partially answered my second question in a way. But now, second question was, how do you, in a space where, so my company is a projects company, right? So I get to call people who are in the field for construction and projects works, like professionals. Now, how do you make sure that those people more or less apply a BIM approach? Because you as an employer, or let's say I know it, but now the people that come there, they've been in the field, they know how to do things the way they've been doing them, but you know that there's a better way, but you don't want to force it on them because they might make mistakes. They might tell you, no, my qualification says I've been doing this for 30 years and I'm not changing it because of just you. So how do you get people to kind of look at it differently? And I'm young and I'm a company owner, but that doesn't help, because now when I find someone who's experienced, I still need to make them see, not force them to see, because that just ruins everything.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer you from what Richard shared yesterday. And as a company owner, you have the power to sign your own policies. It can be as basic as saying, in this firm, we operate 1, 2, 3. So company policies would be a low-hanging fruit, whereas the leader, you can determine that. But to develop that policy, you may then need to consult in terms of how you craft it so that it's engaged and. But I think it would be the one point of call where, as the leader, you design the environment in which you want to invite these people to operate in. And then policy is just paper. There still need to be the work on the culture and the attitude and all of that. So nothing comes without investment, isn't it? So you gotta put in the work to put in those change management practices within your own firm. You as the leader yourself consult where you need to say, I wanna design a space that's like this and like that and like that. And we do have business coaches, company coaches, people whose specialization is around company culture and how to design a culture that's inclusive for your people. And you need to invite the same people you talk about into those conversations to say, you are now transitioning to operate in this firm. It's an engaged process. It's not an overnight. You can't just issue the policy and people practice as you'd like them to. My lady?
Hello. I think this will probably be my last question for the day. I just want to say thank you so much for this. I was not here yesterday, unfortunately, but I've learned so much in the past few hours, so thank you so much, and I hope to see more of this at Tugs. It's a great initiative. In terms of BIM in the future, there was a lot of talk of, the bridges. There was also earlier on, the example of the Broekman building. And to me, those are already, projects that have been conducted in space. Is there perhaps maybe in future, I don't know if it exists already, but like a platform like Esri for GIS that it kind of like captures these projects where we see maybe a new era of GIS or something for the future, you know, so that you don't have to redo that work if it's already been done, if I could put it that way. And then what also makes me very excited about BIM is if I look at my current problems where I stay in Res, and across from me is like this open air club, and next to it is another club. So I have awful noise at night, and you know, sleeping patterns are horrible because of this noise. And when we look at buildings and the construction of buildings and all those things, main things that are taken into account is like, you know, the temperature and those things. But I think things like sound is also something that's kind of neglected in a way sometimes. And with, you know, densification, all those things in cities, that's something that really is, I think, should be considered. And I think BIM will also help with that you can see with I think it was the 3D modeling where you can kind of, those maybe sound projections can be shown, and like things can be put in place like policy to ensure that that doesn't happen so that people can sleep at night. Another example I would say is I was speaking to a friend of mine, and we spoke about it. I don't know if it's coincidence, but there's a row of houses behind a mall, and they are across from where the dumpster place is of the mall. And those buildings specifically struggle a lot with cockroaches. So we're like, is it a coincidence or not? But stuff like that, you know, it doesn't really, I don't know if that's taken into consideration in buildings. I'm just a student, so I'm not sure. But you know, those type of things can now be taken into consideration because we're developing. So yeah, I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution. I think you were contributing to the space.
I'll try and respond because
Sure.
this is a whole lot of questions with a whole lot of layers. And the answer is, all things are possible, but it is about framing the problem at hand. So it's not necessarily useful to the world to list all BIM projects. It's useful to you. So the skill is actually in what is useful to you to extract from the world and make it useful beyond you. That is way more interesting than asking for us, can Esri have a planetary digital twin available because it's interesting on a Friday at 3 o'clock, you know? But so I think the framing is, yes, it's possible to do these things. For what purpose, you know? And the purpose is the cockroaches, the water, the this, the that, the this. Making that purpose clear is going to make it easier to extract information from this world. But just to have digital worlds available just because isn't actually so useful. It's just a lot of data that means nothing unless there's a problem attached to it, like the noise control, the precinct management, the better bridge. Without a problem, data is useless. It's completely useless. And I think our job as human beings is to create good, define good problems so that we can solve them with our tools.
And the main reason I was saying you're contributing to the conversation is that we were talking about stage 8 and 9, which talks about repurposing of buildings. So it might not only be just the design fault, but just that buildings were repurposed and that protocols between what you are now going to use the building for, there wasn't much management in terms of that transition. So it is part of what we will consider as problems for future.
I just want to also add to this discussion. New Zealand has a digital twin of a city. And
could you kindly hold the mic closer? I'm struggling.
New Zealand has a digital twin of a city. And that information was then shared with all of the residents in that city. It was just a view I wanted to share for a question. I want to bring it back to the coding side, and maybe Andre can answer me. What is your feeling about AI doing coding? Is it reliable, first of all? And then second, can you expand on the future of coding in regards of no code or minimal code?
Good, thanks, Brian. On the question of reliability, I think it's to the end person that uses it and for what application. If you want to learn a programming language, I think it's great. It's a wide body of knowledge. But keep in mind, a language model is good at language, and patterns is not necessarily a reflection of the truth. Try and ask it a math question and you see how quickly it falls over. And we have had instances of testing things and evaluating and comparing it, that the reliability is a issue. Ultimately, responsibility will remain with a person. You cannot hold a computer to account, not now nor ever. So ultimately, if I'm the engineer and sign off on something, that responsibility lies with me. So you do need some measure of experience and skill set, and I think that's the human side of things that will become more important and more expensive to some extent, to make sure that yes, you have these accelerated capabilities, but how do you use that and implement it in a day-to-day operation, or to increase your efficiency if you want to save time. On the future, on the low-code, no-code, we are sort of have a bit of a portfolio, if I can call it that, of the different tools. I was quite surprised the one day when another employee approached us. So for those that is not that familiar with the Microsoft ecosystem, things like Power Automate and Power Apps. So we had a particular scenario, so people can do training, but it needs to be signed off by managers and track their progress and send them update emails and all that. And I knew about Power Automate, and the person approached me and they developed this whole workflow diagram already of automating that system to a large extent. And that's when I also realized the value of, yes, we can do Python and data analytics and AI, that's good, but a lot of the utility and value still sits with your lower hanging fruit. So the day-to-day operations, whether that's even administrative type of tasks, that can alleviate a lot of the friction and issues that we do tend to pick up in day-to-day operations. And even something funny that I implemented is to remind people to do their timesheets. So every Thursday, 1 o'clock, there's a little spam bot that spams you to make sure that you should submit your timesheet. So even counting a bit for human behavior. So there is a large ecosystem. The tools and resources are definitely available for that. We are seeing an increasing use of interoperability between different softwares, the increasing availability of APIs, so you can physically talk to the software. We're not quite there yet. James mentioned to take screenshots. Sometimes it's a bit of a manual process. Move the cursor to XY position, then click, then wait 1 second. Not ideal. It's halfway towards automation, but the golden era for us would be if there's a more open platform between these different softwares, even though there's no economic incentive for them to always do that, similar to what IFC is trying to do with the data and interoperability of models, because that then allows us to unlock the systemization of all these different components to build these powerful data pipelines.
I'd just like to add an answer towards the AI argument, is your large language models like ChatGPT, for example, cannot do maths. It is just a very sophisticated predictive text model. So the data that it's trained on says 1 + 1 is 2. So when you ask it what is 1 + 1, it basically just predicts that that value is 2. It cannot do the maths like a human can. So if you think of all the data that's available that something like ChatGPT was trained on, basic maths is readily available. Basic Excel functions are easily available. Basic Python is available. But like Andre says, niche engineering or architectural solutions are not something that's readily available in a space such as the internet. So to take something like an AI model such as ChatGPT, which is a language model, for its answer is to completely misunderstand what that AI's function is. So yeah.
Thank you for that. There was a part to your question where you were asking about templates and just the platform where some of these things are shared. And I do believe that there are some of the exhibitors here who are sharing some of those open platforms where you can visit the site and see what available templates there are and play around these templates. I'm a very, very firm believer that templates are the best place to start it when you want to learn something. From the template, then you can customize whatever function you have. And within the digital space, there's a lot of digital information available. After all, it is the world of geeks and where geeks excel, and I love, sometimes I identify as a geek myself in other portions, but the point I'm getting at is that there are a lot of people who are passionate about what they do, and at times they offer that. They develop something and say, here it is for free. So before you think of buying or studying or whatever, look at the templates that are available in the World Wide Web. It is as wide as our brain galaxies are.
Good afternoon, thank you. I just wanted to first of all reflect. You asked for some reflection of the 2 days. I'd like to just reflect on that. I think we can debate a lot of issues for another couple of days. First of all, for those who put this together, thank you very much. I implore you to continue. We need this drive towards a uniform standard and approach. For my own personal journey, this has been a long time coming. I'm unfortunately way past proficiency in the BIM design aspect, but I do understand some of it from years gone by. I just wanted to, on reflection, just bring us back to a crucial point for me, is why are we doing all of this? We all entered this fraternity, and a technical approach, whether that be architectural or engineering, or to provide solutions to common problems, to improve and to better. I think that is, though that's a noble statement, there is a monetary and a day-to-day activity in living in that as well. But that's where the curiosity started. For me, it was engineering, but there is a fundamental principle that we must keep in mind, and that is keep it simple. We need to find a solution to the problem. You can deal with analysis paralysis and information overload and data overload and complexity. We can make this as complex as we'd like, or we can choose to make it as simple as possible. And finding common ways of working and common solutions is where we need to start. And it needs to be the basis. Pretty pictures and pretty models, it needs to be the basis, and it needs to be the solution driven to find simple and easy solutions to problems. The complexity of it in computational, I'm amazed in what you can do. It's wonderful. The coding side of it, there's lots of potential, the AI, but what are we here for? And that is to unify the industry in terms of making things simpler in an approach and in the way we work. But thank you for this. And as I stated earlier to Khaled, I think the rest of the professional fraternity should get involved, and we should unify along these lines. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's it. Okay, cool. I think more just to add to the discussion today. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with the book called The Toyota Way. So the book is almost 20 years old, but it's one of my favorite books in the world. And the reason for that is because it actually underpins a lot of what we were speaking about today. So a core component of that, if you know the story behind Toyota, is that they started from humble beginnings. And the humble beginnings originated around the word standardization. And they saw standardization as a tool. And what that tool meant or signified is continuous improvement. And essentially what we're doing here today, by bringing this group of people together, looking at processes to standardize the way that we work, and then underpinning that with technology, is that continuous improvement and the way that we're moving forward in the industry. So even the smaller companies that feel you need all the bells and whistles and the fancy software, you don't. Most of the time, it's actually understanding your data, and like Dr. Abrey and Astrid sort of mentioned, you know, it's got to do with your input and your output. And the more you understand that and standardize that, that's where you then make a start. Whether it's in Excel or you're using a drawing board, it really doesn't matter. But yeah, it's always about continuous improvement.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for the presentations, and I think most people here are left with a laundry list of questions that we would like to ask, but I will concentrate on 2 questions for the team that's on the stage. My first question is, what are the solutions that you presented in 2 case studies, the one with the rivet model and Dynamo and the bridges, were they transferable to other projects? And the next question is, like, since many computational design solutions may be unique and require creation of new computation modules, how do you determine when a computational design will be more beneficial versus traditional design at a conceptual phase?
Cool. I'm going to answer the bridge question. So to be able to deliver that project in 6 weeks, we built those workflows over a year and a half, over 5 projects already. So that was a culmination at the time for the workflows that we developed in computational design. So aspects of each model that you develop are reused constantly, but each solution from start to end is unique. It will always be unique. Each project is unique. That's the fact of the matter. But we're not developing a system from start to end. We're developing small areas of automation, small areas of improvement, small areas of, as Abrey mentioned, efficiency and productivity that can then be applied to other spaces and places. And whether that be in a visual programming language, such as you mentioned, such as Dynamo or Grasshopper, in that instance, it can also be in what James works in, with a lot of Power Query, a lot of Power BI, and it can even be in Python. So there's many different ways to come to a solution, but every solution that you develop is always going to be improved upon if you are given the opportunity in the next project.
Thank you. I think we've got one more. Sure, close it for us.
Okay, my question is very simple, but I just want to ask, how can we get organizations to kind of work together? Like you find City of Joburg, maybe GRA is fixing potholes, doing all road markings this week, and a week after, maybe Joburg Water is fixing the pipe under that same road. Whereas I believe if maybe there was one platform where they can actually communicate, one can actually do the pipe maintenance first, and the other come with road markings and potholes and everything.
If there's an answer to that, that will be a dream come true.
I'm going to use that as our closing question because I was tasked to come up with a digital twin of Hatfield. Yeah? And I was like, okay, this is going to be great. I'm going to put everything that I can find in a platform. I'm going to organize the whole Hatfield into categories. I'm going to assign people what I think they should be doing, where they should be doing the thing, and it's going to be perfect. The system is going to be perfect, and it's going to work forever, for everybody, for always. It is 4 years later. There is no system. There is no perfect, because it's not stuff that matters. It's how we work together as organizations and how we intend to solve problems. And I think that was the biggest lesson for me in this Hatfield Digital Twin City journey. And I don't think I'll ever see a Hatfield Digital Twin City in that way, because that is not the right way to work together. The right way, we're not working together to make machines better. We're working together to live better in habitats. And along the way, problems come, and we have to solve those problems. So the perfect system will never exist. The better way of working will. But it will take us agreeing as a community that we want to work together. So I know this is a very abstract philosophical answer, but I really do think that's the point of this kind of conversation. That's the point of having conversation at all, leaving your badge behind and serving others, because there is no perfect system. It is a complete illusion. But there's tools and skills and ways of working that we can adopt together that gets us closer to solving problems. So yes, I think I'll close with that kind of thought, that what we're trying to do with BIM community in these conferences and these wonderful teams is open up space for conversation to make life and work better and serving other people. Whatever your discipline, whatever your background, whatever your history and your ideas, is to serve people. Technology is an instrument to help us do that. So I'll hand over to Amanda to maybe just finish off the evening or afternoon, good morning, good night, and we'll hopefully see you at the next event. Amanda, over to you.
I will not even spoil it. I think I love those closing remarks. If you may give yourselves a round of applause for sticking through till the very end. Woo! And at times, it takes such little steps as what you've done today to stick things through. Through the breaks, we were asking ourselves, what happens when people just, let things go? You start off on such a high note, and then you find ways of exiting and exiting. Nothing will ever progress if we do not stick things through. Consistency has been termed to be the best currency, even beyond data. So let's find ways to stick things through. The energy that you have today, this training that you think you want, and this upskilling that you want, may you find ways of not getting lost in the day-to-day, because the moment we leave here, we go back to business as usual, and that spark dies. I hope with these words, with all the gods listening to me, that spark never dies, and you carry it, and it multiplies, and through this community, the tide rises. Thank you very much.